Coming up at 10, prosecutors consider a criminal investigation into Volkswagen and a rock star welcome for Pope Francis in Washington.
Highlights from today's exciting matches. Scotland and Australia both in action in the Rugby World Cup 2015 highlights in 40 minutes after the ITV News at 10.
Driven out, the VW boss quits as the emissions scandal deepens. Martin Winterkorn says he was stunned by his company's misconduct. Tonight, prosecutors are considering a criminal investigation.
Also tonight, splits and threats as Europe stumbles towards a deal on refugees.
The warmest Washington welcome for a Pope speaking out on climate change.
And in the Rugby World Cup, it's back down to earth for the land of the rising sun.
This is ITV News at 10 with Mark Austin and Julie Etchingham.
Good evening. The biggest car company in the world, Volkswagen, is in turmoil tonight after its chief executive resigned over the diesel emissions scandal. German prosecutors are said to be considering a criminal inquiry into the rigging of emissions tests in America. Martin Winterkorn insisted he was innocent of any personal wrongdoing, but said the company needed a fresh start. It comes amid fears the crisis could threaten Germany's wider economy. Our business editor Joel Hills reports.
A week ago, Martin Winterkorn was in Frankfurt and had reason to look pleased. VW had recently overtaken Toyota to become the world's biggest car maker. Now he's gone, taking responsibility for a scandal he says he knew nothing about. The announcement was made by VW's executive committee. Its head said, "We recognise not only the economic damage caused, but especially the loss of trust of many customers around the world." In a separate statement, the executive committee thanked Dr. Winterkorn for towering contributions in the past decades and for his willingness to take responsibility in this critical phase for the company. This attitude is illustrious. The committee added that it was expecting further personnel consequences in the next few days. Volkswagen has asked state prosecutors to investigate who was responsible for the decision to use engine software to cheat emissions tests in the United States. It's still not clear if the company tried to do the same in Europe, but a recent study commissioned by the Independent Committee on Climate Change concluded that manufacturers exploit loopholes.
It's widely acknowledged that most, if not all, the manufacturers do game the tests, and some will go to extremes like taking out spare tyres, taking off windscreen wipers, disconnecting the alternator.
The car industry in Britain denies sharp practice. Vauxhall, Ford, Toyota, Honda, BMW, Jaguar Land Rover and Nissan have all told ITV News they don't have a defeat device or similar software built into any of their vehicles. Vauxhall said they expect employees to act legally and ethically without exception. Toyota does not engage in any practice that would seek to enhance emissions performance, and Nissan said they're committed to upholding the law. On the stock market, VW shares rallied. ITV News understands the company will revise down the number of cars involved in this scandal below 10 million. Better news, but still a very big number.
And Joel, people will want to know this. What are the implications for British cars or British car owners?
Well, 500,000 people, Mark, bought a car from the Volkswagen Group in Britain last year. If you own a VW, an Audi or a Skoda with a diesel engine, you will want to know what's going on. You should find out more tomorrow. The company's hoping to provide more detail on what happened and where. Car dealers and shareholders, of course, will be holding their breath. Lawyers will be licking their lips. The fact is that this looks, Mark, as if it's a German company that it's in effort to conquer an American market, cut corners fatally. If it does, though, transpire that actually Volkswagen was building engines here in Europe that didn't even meet European safety standards, expect all hell to break loose. The European Commission is in the process of looking at this. It's welcomed investigations in Germany, in France and in Italy. Here in Britain, the VCA, the licensing authorities, in the process of going back to the manufacturers we heard from there and checking they're good to their word.
All right, Joel, we'll see where this goes tomorrow. Thank you very much.
European leaders are meeting in Brussels now to try to repair the deep divisions that have opened up over the refugee crisis. Slovakia has already threatened legal action over the decision to impose quotas for relocating 120,000 refugees. Well, tonight's meeting comes as thousands more exhausted people arrived at Europe's borders. Our Europe editor, James Mates, is in Brussels tonight. James.
With a serious and growing crisis within its borders, it had been hoped that today's summit would produce a show of unity and decisiveness. Instead, we have a deep and very angry split developing. And while they are still talking here tonight, no sign yet of anything you would call a game changer.
It has taken a week to get a so-called emergency summit underway. But if the wheels of European politics are turning slowly, the influx of refugees and migrants across Europe's borders is only accelerating. This was Croatia this morning, just some of the 50,000 plus to have passed through this country in the last week. And this is the border between Hungary and Austria. In Brussels, they've been arguing over how to resettle 120,000 refugees across the EU, but around 500,000 have arrived and are still coming. But far from cooperating, the EU is now split between East and West over forcing countries to take their quota of arriving refugees. The Romanians, the Czechs, the Slovaks, the Hungarians have been outvoted. Hungary's leader particularly vociferous in his criticism of European rules being ignored.
I have to fulfill the regulation of Schengen. I can't do anything else. Otherwise, if you don't follow the regulations, the whole European Union will be involved into a chaos. We have to follow the regulation and restore the legal order.
Britain has an opt-out, so no compulsory quotas here, but there have been plenty of accusing fingers pointed at David Cameron for not doing enough. So he came offering not resettlement places, but hard cash for refugees still in camps.
Britain has already given over £1 billion, more than any other country other than the United States. And today I can announce we'll commit another £100 million.
These are substantial sums, but it's been clear to these leaders for months that however much you improve refugee camps, people are still going to want to get to Europe if they can. So we are promised a new emphasis on stopping people from getting here.
The most urgent question we should ask ourselves tonight is how to regain control of our external borders. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense to even speak about a common European migration policy.
Of course, as we can see from these pictures of inflatable boats turning up unhindered on the Greek island of Lesbos today, those external borders are not being controlled at all. So the numbers are rising far faster than the politicians can agree what to do with them. And further north, the weather is closing in. This may have been an emergency summit, but a real emergency will be upon us in weeks if there are still tens of thousands living outdoors. James Mates, ITV News, Brussels.
Well, here in Britain, the first Syrians have begun to arrive from camps on their country's borders. Many people from different backgrounds, but driven by the same need to escape the hardship and horror of war. ITV News spoke to one family who have already made the perilous journey to claim asylum in the UK. They told Raghi Omar how they found sanctuary and a new life in their adopted country.
The war in Syria has turned Mahmoud Alawi's life upside down in every sense. He is from a wealthy, prominent family with centuries-old roots in Damascus. These are his daughters, Leen, Tulin and Cedra, playing in their large living room before the war. Tulin helping their gardener plant new flowers while Cedra waters them. It is a riches-to-rags story. Despite his background, Mahmoud found himself paying people smugglers £8,000. His wife Noor looks on as he retells the story of how, after nearly 6 months travelling, he finally made it to Britain, and the compassion shown by the first British officer who interviewed him when he claimed asylum.
The first people, when I met him, the officer, he smiled. You know, more than 5 months, no see anybody, he smiled. Take it easy now, you are safe, and take your time to do that, and you are now it's fine, yeah, you know.
What did that feel like when the police officer said that to you?
I can't explain in English language, you know, how you will feel relaxed.
He came across from Calais, hidden on a boat, and only realised he'd reached Britain when he saw cars in Dover with GB licence plates. But he'd left his family behind, not wanting them to make the hazardous journey. His first thought was for them.
When I reach, I think, okay, I'm rich now, but what about my family? It's the first question when I make the first or small interview.
After almost 4 months of applying for refugee status for them, he got a letter with the news he'd dreamt of just before Christmas last year.
And when I received the letter from the Home Office, I can't forget this moment. You will be safe, you will bring your family, you will help you to grow up again, to stand by again, to fix your life.
Mahmoud and his wife say they feel blessed to have been given refuge here, describing Britain as being like a mother to them. Their children joined their local school within a few weeks. They picked up English very quickly, made many friends and feel integrated, already excelling in their studies. Mahmoud and Noor say they're delighted that other Syrian families are now being given the same chance at a new life as them. Mahmoud said he wanted to speak Arabic to send this message. Honestly, I can't express my gratitude enough to the British people, he says. I can't put it into words. I thank anyone feeling such empathy for the Syrian people who have fallen on these tough times. Raghi Omar, ITV News.
James, one very emotional story there, but of course there are tens of thousands undergoing the same ordeal tonight as we speak. Are the EU leaders any closer to solving this crisis?
Well, you know, it's really interesting, Julie, comparing Raghi's report there with mine that went before it. Among the thousands that I showed you on the move there, apparently faceless mass, each one of them has a story as individual as Mohammed's and are hoping for an ending as happy as him. For those who've arrived, there probably is a chance of that, but they have been warning tonight. The President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, said, look, there are 8 million displaced people in Syria. There are another 4 million displaced just outside Syria. We are talking about numbers that would overwhelm this continent, Europe's ability to absorb them, but also, much more to the point, overwhelm the welcome that people like Mohammed and other genuine refugees have received.
James, thank you.
Pope Francis appeared smiling and waving on the White House balcony today before wading straight into the political agenda. With thousands watching his speech on the White House lawn, the Pope called for urgent action on climate change.
Well, these are the scenes in Washington right now, this evening, as Pope Francis celebrates a Mass in honour of an 18th century Spanish friar who's being made a saint for bringing Christianity to California. Our Washington correspondent, Robert Moore, has been following the Pope today.
Perhaps no world leader has arrived at so formal a ceremony in so modest a car. Pope Francis emerging from his Fiat 500, part of a broader message of humility and, yes, of care for the environment. This was America welcoming a pope and a president who sees in Francis an ally on climate change.
And Holy Father, you remind us that we have a sacred obligation to protect our planet, God's magnificent gift to us.
It seems clear to me also that climate change is a problem we can no longer be left to a future generation.
This is the Pope's first ever visit to the United States. And although today brought him into the most powerful office in the land, he will also be meeting the powerless, including prisoners in Pennsylvania.
I notice all of you are much better behaved than usual.
The White House has not said what they discussed in private, but tomorrow he will speak before Congress, and many there are climate change skeptics. Washington is normally immune to the appeal of foreign visitors. But this Pope, the first from the Americas, is different. His modest, understated style resonates, and thousands of people lined the streets to catch a glimpse.
What is already clear from this rapturous reception is that America is wide open to the Pope's core message of social and economic justice, and no less to his plea for greater environmental awareness.
He came from humble beginnings. He knows what it's like to live among the poor.
Such a huge, diverse crowd. I can't think of another world figure that can pull people out like this.
America's Catholic Church is still struggling to emerge from the sex abuse scandal. And Francis is urging his bishops and priests in the US to remember that they are serving above all the poor and the underprivileged. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
Now, he may only be leading 8 MPs, but the new Lib Dem leader, Tim Farron, delivered an impassioned attack on David Cameron at his party conference today. He accused the Prime Minister of a pitiful response to the refugee crisis, calling on the UK to opt in to the EU resettlement plan. Our political correspondent, Emily Morgan, reports now from Bournemouth.
As good omens go, the sun shining on Tim Farron this morning was perhaps one of the better ones, and he needed it as he arrived to deliver the most important speech of his career.
Got you!
Casual and personable, he started with the customary jokes, then refused to apologise for the coalition, which ultimately led to their defeat.
There are those that would like me to take this opportunity to distance myself from the past, to say it was all some dreadful mistake, to say I disagree with Nick, but I don't, so I won't. There is nothing grubby or unprincipled about wanting to win, nothing noble about defeat. Losing sucks.
He promised they would win again, that housing would be a priority, and called on Liberals everywhere to join him. But he saved his energy for David Cameron, accusing him of trying to capitalise on the photo of a drowned Syrian boy.
It is pitiful, embarrassing, and it makes me so angry. Because I am proud. I am proud. I am proud to be British, and I am proud of Britain's values. So when Mr. Cameron turns his back on the needy and turns his back on our neighbours, I want the world to know he does not speak for me. He does not speak for us. He does not speak for Britain.
That was Tim Farron's first chance to state his case to his party and to the country. It was passionate, it was personal, and it had policy. But will it help persuade the country to return to his party?
We came to Wareham in Dorset to ask residents just that. Mr. Farron will need to win this seat back to make any sort of impression.
The minimum effort for the maximum headline.
To be perfectly honest, I've never heard of him before. I've never seen him.
You didn't know who he was?
I didn't
know he was the leader of the Lib Dems?
No, I didn't. I didn't know he was the leader.
So he's got a lot to do.
He has got a lot to do.
It's not done them any favours being in coalition, I don't believe. But he seems a fresh voice and he seems sincere. So I would give him the benefit of the doubt.
The new leader will need others to agree. He says it's his mission to get them back in power. That's the test, and it's an almighty challenge. Emily Morgan, ITV News in Bournemouth.
Still to come on tonight's News at 10, a first look at tomorrow's front pages, plus
Britain's oldest family business, the butcher's shop that's been open since the reign of Henry VIII.
A parliamentary report today called for the creation of a new charities watchdog to prevent fundraisers from pestering vulnerable people for donations.
The review was set up after widespread public concern over the death of 92-year-old poppy seller Olive Cook. But as our consumer editor Chris Choi reports, the report stops short of recommending the regulation of charities.
They wanted our money. What they got was month after month of damaging headlines. Today came new proposals to prevent good causes using bad fundraising. This letterbox is just one way charities reach Barbara Dunn. Through her mail, phone calls and visits, she typically receives 25 donation requests every week.
I didn't think they were allowed to just pass on your details like that to other charities. And I know what I can afford, but you try to explain that to them, but they don't. It seems as if it's been turned into a big business.
Today's Charities Review proposes a fundraising regulator. It would have powers to investigate and sanction charities through naming and shaming, cease and desist orders, and by referring them to the Charity Commission, where they could face legal action. The review is also recommending a new service to allow people to opt out of receiving any fundraising letters and phone calls whatsoever. Most fundraisers like these out tonight do act ethically. Shelter was one of many big charities to welcome today's proposals. It says they'll help ensure total respect for donors. But questions remain about whether the new plan goes far enough. It is still self-regulation, and there are issues about just how much it will all cost. An organisation representing 1,500 charity bosses now accepts a likely drop in earnings.
I think there could be, but what I would say is that if in the short term there is an impact on raised funds, that is as nothing compared to the upside of ensuring and guaranteeing public trust.
Today's report is a powerful signal that protecting charity income will not take priority over protecting the vulnerable. Chris Choi, ITV News.
Figures were released by the NHS today suggesting the shocking extent of female genital mutilation. Between April and June this year, doctors recorded more than 1,000 cases of women and girls who had suffered FGM. Our health editor Rachel Younger is here. Extraordinary figures, these. Much worse than feared, I assume.
Well, we simply didn't know what to fear. There was anecdotal evidence, but until now we simply didn't have the figures to prove what was happening. And although these figures are heartbreaking, we should at least take hope from the fact that they now exist, because it's only when you know the scale of something that you can begin to confront it, and there is plenty to confront. In the 3 months between April and June of this year, over 1,000 cases of FGM were recorded in England, with 60 trusts submitting one or more cases. Now, some of those cases were picked up at routine hospital appointments for other things, so many years after the procedure actually took place, but 9 cases were found in girls younger than 18. And those figures will go up, because at the moment it's just hospitals reporting these figures, only one GP amongst them, but the law will change, and then GPs too will have to report every single case they find.
Right, let's just be clear. This practice has been illegal in the UK for, 3 decades? Why has it taken so long to realise the extent of this?
Well, for many years it was cultural sensitivities. It is also, of course, an incredibly difficult thing for victims to talk about. Plenty of stigma. There has been a very effective campaign to get the Home Office to take this seriously, and indeed the NHS. And campaigners will tell you, because of the stigma, the NHS's role is crucial.
All right, Rachel, thank you very
much. What needs to be done now is to encourage more professionals, i.e. doctors, midwives, nurses, to report cases of FGM that they come across. And because, obviously, FGM, we know the consequences of FGM, the physical, the psychological, and the emotional consequences of FGM last a lifetime for both girls and women.
And it is worth saying that despite the way this has been brought into the open tonight, there still hasn't been a single successful prosecution in the UK.
All right, Rachel, thank you.
A new report into the case of Asher King, the little boy who was taken abroad for brain cancer treatment by his parents, says they could have put him at risk by removing him from hospital in the UK without consent. The Portsmouth Safeguarding Children Board also criticised Southampton General Hospital for delays in getting a second opinion for the parents. Now, the Japanese fairy tale at the Rugby World Cup was stopped in its tracks by a dose of Scottish reality today after causing the biggest upset in years with victory over South Africa in their opening match. The Brave Blossoms were well beaten by Scotland. Our sports editor Steve Scott reports now from Gloucester.
Successive shocks in elite sport are a rarity, and Scotland certainly didn't look in the mood to be on the wrong side of rugby history this afternoon. Japan, though, gave them an early shock, repeating the form that felled the Springboks.
More Japanese joy!
Watching in Edinburgh, those fans who couldn't make it south were probably thinking, here we go again. In fact, it was so close for so long you could sense Scottish nerves building. But they were well and truly soothed in a one-sided second half as the Scots breached the Japanese defence 4 times.
It's Hardy!
Time now for the Scots back home to open their lungs. It was no surprise as the game wore on, the Japanese looked worn out, outpaced by a flying Scottish back line. Mark Bennett helped himself to his second of the game, ensuring Scotland's bonus point.
And now it's Bennett again!
Finn Russell's wriggling rounded off a pretty good afternoon. In the end, it was just too much to ask Japan to beat 2 rugby superpowers inside 5 days. They may have lost heavily, but their skill, commitment and style has won them many friends in this rugby heartland.
It's they did it well in first half, but very tired.
Japan can go away from this really, really proud, whatever happens now, and so can Scotland, of course.
What's more, Scotland will be delighted to have kicked off their campaign by restoring rugby's world order. Steve Scott, ITV News, Gloucester.
Well, elsewhere, Australia managed to beat Fiji but missed out on an all-important bonus point. They scored 3 tries, including 2 from David Pocock, but failed to get a 4th, which would have earned them that extra point. The match finished 28-13 and leaves the Wallabies a point behind England and Wales in Pool A.
And France continued their winning start with a victory over Romania. After level pegging for half an hour, the French side managed 5 tries. The final score was 38-11.
And you can watch highlights of today's games after the news at 10:40 this evening on ITV and STV, and a little later at 11:10 if you're watching on UTV.
To tomorrow's front pages now, and The Guardian has our top story. The lawyers are circling, it says, as the diesel emissions scandal costs Volkswagen's chief executive his job. The Telegraph claims the EU is set to bill Britain to help fund a new scheme to solve the refugee crisis. And The Express claims that David Cameron is pressing EU leaders to send economic migrants back and only allow in genuine refugees.
So finally, when this firm of family butchers on a Dorset high street first opened for business, Henry VIII was feasting with his courtiers at Hampton Court Palace. R.J. Bolson & Sons customers doubtless had a much more modest diet than the gluttonous king, but they must have been doing something right, because 500 years on, the firm is still there, Britain's oldest family business. Nina Nanar reports.
Plagues, fires, floods. In 1979, the water would have been up to your waist in this shop. You know, we've got over these things.
They know a thing or two about survival at R.J. Bolson & Son.
I like to look at those lamb chops.
Yeah,
you can have 2 of them.
For 5 centuries, they've been serving the meat eaters of Bridport in Dorset. A cut above the rest when it comes to family firms. No other one in Britain has lasted this long.
It feels like I've been here 500 years sometimes, and I say to customers, if you eat a pound of steak a day, you don't age, and that is my motto.
Well, it's a very good motto for a butcher to have.
It is a very good motto, yeah, indeed.
So what do you get here that you don't get at a supermarket?
Chit-chat, a smile, somebody knows about you, you meet other people in the shop for a chit-chat.
The Bolson family is rightly proud of the shop's new fame.
And it's the 12th of September 1515 when they granted him the licence to trade at the town hall.
Hanging on the wall, a copy of the licence in Latin granted to the founder of the business, Robert Bolson, during the reign of Henry VIII. Richard was a teenager when he started at the shop with his dad Donald 40 years ago. It's been that way through the ages, fathers handing on to sons and nephews, the recession and wars failing to keep the customers away.
Why do you think it's survived so long?
It's a banter, isn't it? We all have a laugh and a joke. Little shop to dine out very fast and very quick, so you've got to look after them.
There seems no danger of this shop dying out. Richard has a son and grandsons waiting in the wings, not that he's ready to be consigned to history just yet.
I'm not letting go of the reins. I've got another 30 years behind this counter. I love my job.
26 generations and counting. Nina Nanar, ITV News in Bridport.
And that is tonight's ITV News at 10.
So we're 60, they're 500. Coming next, the national weather and the news where you are. But from Julie and from me, good night. Thanks for watching.
Good night.
sweat and tears. Tomorrow from 6 on Good Morning Britain.
No matter what the weather, Green Flag Breakdown Response sponsors the ITV National Weather.
Hello to you again. A very good evening. Well, all the action across northern counties tonight. Lively downpours with rumbles of thunder possible across Scotland and Northern Ireland could well wake some of us up. Elsewhere, the cloud cover keeping temperatures up a few degrees, nowhere near as cold as the last few nights. But this area of rain across the south and the southeast could well be slow to shift tomorrow morning. So disappointingly dull and damp to start the new day. Elsewhere, a little more cheerful with the sunshine. But again, showers and blustery downpours on and off through Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland. Rumbles of thunder, possibly some hail. Elsewhere, a little drier, a little better with the sunshine. Temperatures very similar to today, but if you factor in those blustery winds, feeling just a little chillier for all of us. I'll see you again soon. Have a good night.
Green Flag Breakdown Response sponsors the ITV National Weather.
Good evening, I'm Lucrezia Minerini. This is ITV News London. The Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police has defended the controversial child abuse inquiry Operation Midland. Sir Bernard Hogan House said the investigation, which is looking into alleged murders by a high-profile paedophile ring, was thorough and professional, despite claims it is close to collapse. Simon Harris has more.
Harvey Proctor is the ex-Tory MP who says he's the victim of a gay witch hunt by Scotland Yard detectives looking into alleged murders and child abuse. Last month he disclosed how he was questioned about crimes said to have been witnessed by a man known only as Nick. Today, speaking over the internet, Mr Proctor claimed Operation Midland was discredited and on the verge of collapse.
I can foresee in the next 12 months no evidence to corroborate Nick's fantasy allegations will be forthcoming.
The police have been criticised for describing Nick's allegations as credible and true, but today the Commissioner said the Met had no intention of closing down Operation Midland.
That's not accurate. We will do whatever we need to do to get to the bottom of this. It's taken a while to get this far, but the trouble with these inquiries is often the victims and the witnesses don't have total recall of the information, the detail of the offence, and clearly we have struggled at times to corroborate with such a passage of time some of the things that have been said.
Martin Allen, who was 15, disappeared on his way home from school in London 36 years ago. His name has been linked to Operation Midland, although the police have not publicly speculated on any named victims. Martin's brother believes the Met has a duty to keep the investigation alive.
It's probably the most important thing going on in my life at the moment. They have to get to the bottom of it. And, so we can lay Martin to rest or have a memorial service. I don't think we'll ever find his body.
The Commissioner has a team of almost 30 officers working on Operation Midland. The Yard says they will go where the evidence takes them. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Footage has emerged of police using flash bombs and smoke grenades to foil a burglary at one of London's most exclusive addresses. The video shows the operation underway outside a multi-million-pound property on Eaton Place in Belgravia yesterday. Shocked residents told ITV News the noise was so loud they thought they were gunshots being fired. Rags Martell reports.
Holy moly. No ordinary street and no ordinary burglary.
They will shoot actually after that.
Armed police in bulletproof vests stopped a gang inside this multi-million-pound Belgravia mansion. Smoke grenades thrown by officers to distract them.
I was a bit worried about getting close to the window because I felt that there might be shooting going on of some sort. I then had a quick look and there were a lot of policemen. I think they had somebody being held on the floor in the entrance of the building.
I've seen a lot of police across the road, about maybe 15 guys, maybe more.
Very unusual because around here everything is nice, quiet. It was like a movie shot, Didn't look real.
Police say this operation was intelligence-led. They knew this property was going to be targeted before it happened. 4 people have been arrested and are in custody. This is one of London's most expensive areas, as well as one of the most exclusive. Parts of the TV drama Downton Abbey are filmed here. Former residents include Margaret Thatcher and Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich has a house in Belgravia.
Well, it was the guys next door.
Socialite Tamara Beckwith heard the raid from her home.
Luckily, I didn't know what it was. Otherwise, I'm sure we didn't then go near the front of the house. Obviously, we stayed in the basement.
Tonight, police are not revealing what the intended target of the alleged robbery was, or how detectives knew the raid was going to take place. Rags Martel, ITV News, Belgravia.
Police are urging 2 London men to hand themselves in following an acid attack that left a woman with severe burns to her face and upper body. The attack happened outside a restaurant in Southampton on Friday night. The victim is likely to spend months in hospital. Hampshire Police want to speak with 22-year-old Billy Midmore and his older brother, 26-year-old Jeffrey Midmore.
Make it easier on yourselves. Stop running. Hand yourselves in to local police and we can deal with this. We will find you, and you know that we will, so please come forward sooner rather than later.
The Met Police have apologised for linking a teenager's death to the use of laughing gas and alcohol. 18-year-old Alistair Calvert died in July. At the time, police publicly said they believed his death may have been connected to inhaling nitrous oxide gas, but a post-mortem has since concluded he died from natural causes. The Police Commissioner, Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe, has personally apologised to the family. Drivers endured traffic chaos on the M25 all day today after a car transporter carrying 10 vehicles caught fire. The fire began at 7:30 this morning on the westbound carriageway between Enfield and Potters Bar. It took 30 firefighters to put it out. Delays are expected into the early hours of tomorrow. And the price of a flat in the UK has risen by 60% in the last decade, with London driving the increase. Research by Halifax has found the average cost of a flat in the capital is now over £370,000, more than 3 times that of similar properties elsewhere in the country. Speaking of property, the capital skyline is set for major changes in the next decade as a raft of new towers begin being built. According to new research published today, 39 residential towers, all with a height of 40 stories or more, are either under construction or in the pipeline. Most of them will be in the central area, but many slightly smaller high-rises are due to be built across Greater London. Property experts say the new buildings will redefine the capital, but iconic views will be protected.
The important piece here is around planning view corridors that do restrict development in those corridors to make sure that views, for example, of St Paul's Cathedral are preserved and those important views remain sacrosanct.
David Walliams has launched a new play based on one of his best-selling children's books. Gangster Granny opens in Horsham this November and follows a boy and his grandmother who plot to steal the crown jewels. The book has already been translated into 30 languages, and Walliams says its success has been a humbling experience. He spoke to Ria Chatterjee.
Most people would be curious to know what on earth is going on. But the security guards outside the Tower of London just wanted everyone to go away.
Get in trouble. Yeah, I know. You're going to get arrested.
It was the obvious location to promote the new stage play of David Walliams' children's book, Gangster Granny, about an 11-year-old boy who hates visiting his gran, but then makes a surprising discovery about her.
My granny is an international jewel thief. There can't be a jewel in the world you haven't stolen.
Oh, sure. Ria. Lovely to meet you. How you
His
doing?
own grannies weren't gangsters, but they were enough to inspire the tale.
When I was a kid, I'd feel a bit restless spending time with them because they wanted to play Scrabble and watch the snooker and that kind of thing. And but then when I got them onto a subject that they really cared about, were passionate about, like living through World War II, they would have these amazing stories. And obviously I was 12 then, and I wasn't thinking I was going to write children's books, but when I came to write books, I was thinking back to that time and thinking there has to be a good story there somewhere.
His new book is out tomorrow. It's his 8th children's book, half of which have been adapted for TV.
And I know you get parents contacting you saying, oh, it's wonderful, you know, you've got my child back into reading, which must be a great feeling.
It's the most fantastic thing in the world, getting lots of letters from kids and parents coming up to you in the supermarket and saying, I couldn't get my child to read, especially boys often. They say, I couldn't get my boy to read any books, and now he's read one of yours, and now he's into reading. And I think you never forget your first book. So I take it as quite a big responsibility, because I think, you know, if the book isn't entertaining, they may never read another book. I mean, you do meet people who never, ever read books. Sometimes they're quite proud of that. But you know, there's obviously so much to enjoy in books, and so I'm glad that I've put some kids on the path to reading.
She's my gangster granny with the cool white hair.
Some people think that I'm not all there.
Diamonds, gems.
The production opens in November, starting in Birmingham, before touring the country.
I love cabbage soup and an afternoon sleep.
My granny's the queen.
A book that sat on many a child's bedroom shelf, now on stage. Their imaginations playing out for real. Ria Chatterjee, ITV News.
Right, now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Here's Martin Stew.
Hey, bit cold, isn't it, Guy?
Not for much longer, Roy.
Great.
Hello again. Cloudy, reasonably mild and a little damp out there tonight. Most of the patchy rain will clear away by tomorrow morning, though it is a slightly dull start further to the south. Brightening up for all of us as we head through the morning, so by the afternoon some nice sunny spells, at the risk of one or two isolated showers. Reasonably breezy, but temperatures similar to today, and things looking even nicer as we head towards the end of the week. High pressure building, so plenty of warm sunshine during the day, that will be a little bit chilly at night. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
And that's it. We're back tomorrow with updates in Good Morning Britain. For now, good night.